Hello, and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and we're very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have a dear friend of mine and colleague, Phil Gruber, with us today, who is a subject of healing. A subject that he'll be going into from perspective, you could say the largest possible cosmic perspective that certainly I have ever come across. Phil has been studying Asian healing arts. He's an acupuncturist. He's been involved in different spiritual traditions for a long time and has very much to bring to the table. He'll be doing workshops now in New York, and he's starting to do them actually in different parts of the world. So today he's going to be speaking with us about something in particular called Cathara healing, which is, you could say, the ancient of the ancient, and has come into our lives in the forms of acupuncture, the system, the nadis, Ayurveda, and other systems. All can, in a sense, be traced back to this one unified system that he's very articulate about, and I have a feeling that you're all going to very much enjoy what he has to say about it. So, Phil, so great to see you.
Good. In this capacity.
Yes, indeed. Well, you have been ripening over the years. Your work as an acupuncturist, as a healer, has come to a certain pitch, you could say. You have a purview, or as we were saying before, a Weltanschauung that will shed light on healing from any number of. Our audience would very much like to hear at this point in our history, this crossroads that we're at, what the implications are. Open up. What is Cathara?
Okay, Cathara, now that's K-A-T-H-A-R-A. It's a very, very ancient word in the language of what we call Anahazi. It is purported to be very all the sacred languages, the languages we speak now, are sourced very, very ancient, pre-ancient language known as Anahazi.
Predates Indo-European.
Absolutely.
By how many years? What is the date of
by
this
hundreds
language?
of millions of years. Hundreds of millions.
Right.
The word now, it's a combination of three words. Ka relates to light or the light body, the vehicle for transharmonic
Egyptian, as in
exactly. Same meaning. Tha is sound or tone, and Ra is wholeness or of the one. So light, sound, and wholeness. In Cathara, we study the light and sound structures beneath matter, that which truly lies beneath. You see.
Yes.
That all other templates of manifestation, ultimately resulting in the physical body, are built from. They're built upon. This is the foundation.
What is the evidence of this pre-ancient, pre-Indo-European language?
Okay, I have talked to many through the years. And one of my hobbies through the years was linguistics.
Yes.
And the sequences of this alphabet, what we call the flame letter, the alphabet of the sacred language, you can see reflected in all the languages, mainly Sanskrit, Egyptian, Aramaic, Coptic, Hebrew, Chinese. The syntax, the morphological structure of these languages are very, very similar to this original language called Anahazi. Yeah.
Is there any kind of archaeological evidence or scriptural evidence
Yes, well,
by influence?
My understanding is that there is a great deal of archaeological evidence, but it's been suppressed. It is part of the forbidden archaeology. Because the first things usually in the Quran. I've been to the Quran. You've been to the Dead Sea, yeah. In the Quran, Nag Hammadi. Anytime one of these finds are found, the first people on the scene are the Vatican, the Vatican Department of Science and Antiquities, working, it seems, hand in hand with the Department of Defense and their Delta forces. It takes many years before these scriptures get into the hands of academics in the colleges and universities. By the time they get there, they've been translated for many years now.
Yes.
And being given access what's in these scriptures, you see.
Well, you
It's
made reference the
true.
other day to a festival, and correct me if I'm wrong, Phil, of that honor Kathara. I think
Yes.
you mentioned Ceylon.
It's in Ceylon. Yeah, Once
So
a
what
year,
is-
they have a whole pantheon of gods and goddesses, of course. One of their main activity that has very much to do with healing, and not only that, but help understand mixed structure dimension, the larger context in which the only context is called Kathara.
So that's a direct link
It's
to
a direct
what you're
link.
speaking
It's
of.
one of the more extant or direct links to this very, very, very old tradition. You find bits and pieces, fragments have filtered down through the eons. What we're getting back now is the complete teachings, and I should probably preface this by telling you that the teachings of Cathara and the larger paradigm from which it is drawn, it's called chelictic morphogenetic science. These teachings were drawn from a body of work called the Mahabharata. 8,000 years ago, and I have a lot of evidence for this that I'll show actually in the workshop. 248,000 race. They were given 12
T-I-T-E?
URTITE.
I was there.
They were given, I know you were there, many of us were there, and we've come back. We just keep coming back. They were given 12 holographic discs. They were called the eternal Dora-Torah, or the Dora-Torah plates. At the heart of many of the mystery schools, ascension schools, the Egyptian schools, Mithraic schools, the schools, are the knowledge, still remains, still survives, of the cloistered Dora-Torah plates, embedded holographically, digitally encoded within these discs, memories of the last time life was seeded into this 15-dimensional universe. Now, this goes back 950 billion years.
Billion years.
950, as Carl would say, billion years. And there have been people throughout history, great historical figures like Enoch, for example, John the Baptist, Jesus Christ, Jeshua, Sananda, Melchizedek, that were contracted, that were actually taught how to access kind of about big, kind of like system of Sirius B, around a radioactive isotopic core surrounded by or plated with a kind of silver alloy that you do find here. But if you knew how to run frequency patterns through them, you could download billions and billions of years of information on time cycle mechanics, vibrational mechanics, ascension mechanics, human origins, the stories of the life fields of the angelics and the archangelics. Enoch was one of the translators of these Dora-Torah plates. He wrote books called the Angelic Rosters. You can read now his books that are available on the Wars Among the Angels and the Archangels, but the original books were called the Angelic Rosters. They were vast surveys of the life fields of the angelics and the archangelics and even higher and higher dimensionals. This is the information that has been denied to us for countless eons. I mean, at the time of the Old Testament, the men of the Great Assembly deleted all these books, yes, connected with the Sanhedrin, yes. The men of the Great Assembly, care of Ezra, for the most part. In 325 AD, at the Council of Nicaea, St. Jerome basically single-handedly wrote the organized description into the what we understand now is the canonized Bible text. They took out at least 200 books. They took out books, names like the books of process, Jesus and Melchizedek, the man that has come to be known as Jesus Christ, wrote the 6 books of process, wrote the books of maps and keys, the books of the stargates, not just on this planet, but the universal stargates.
Now, do we have these books that were excluded?
They do exist in one form or another. I don't know about the original Mahabharata. The Mahabharata was the first original transcription of the knowledge of these Dora-Torah plates. I believe it was 590 volumes, 500,000 pages.
Now, what is the relationship between the Dora-Torah plates and what we refer to as Akashic records?
Okay, the Akashic records is actually a planetary memory matrix. You see, as a three-dimensional being, three-dimensionally embodied being, and being limited to three-dimensional perception, we have something called cellular memory, individual cellular memory. A fully embodied angelic, let's say, dimensional consciousness was had we have something called 8 Hova bodies. There are 8 auric shells.
Is that
They're called
H-O-V-A?
H-O-V-A. This is another term in the language which we'll get more into. A Hova body is a three-dimensional...
We'll get more into in the workshop.
Certainly in the workshop. This is part of the anatomy that has never been taught.
Or part of the subtle bodies that...
There are references to these Hova bodies actually in the old Sanskrit literature, the Vedic texts, the Puranas. In the Samsaka Sutra, they talk of Indra's web or Indra's net.
Sure.
The bejeweled net of Indra. They're talking about morphogenetic. They're talking about the fabric of morphogenetic fields and the fabric of manifestation templates. This work does survive in various forms, but certainly not without distortions, intentional or otherwise. But these teachings were known historically as the freedom teachings being brought back now, without elitism, dogma, and such.
Or control of religions.
Or control dogma that you find in works of higher calling. And I'm sure a lot of these translations it wasn't the fault of the translators. They ultimately translate it through their genetic code with and all. They have cultural biases. Their language patterning maybe have been a little different. You know, it's very hard to play a telephone these days with 5 people and the same message that first went in.
Sure, exactly.
So you can imagine what happened to these most sacred of texts. Not to mention the elements, like you say, of control, dogma, elitism, authoritarianism, that is wanted to keep this information from us so we would not know our true origins, our true history, and our true evolutionary destiny.
The scribal tradition actually happens to be a very accurate one from generation to generation,
Yes.
as is the oral tradition, in fact perhaps even more accurate. So the traditions themselves have much to recommend them in terms of accuracy. But overt, purposeful deletion is another discussion. But I want to come back just to understand the distinction, if any, between the Akashic records and the Dora-Torah plates.
The Akashic records now, as a 6-dimensional being, if you're a fully integrated soul identity, which would mean that you have 6 DNA strands fully assembled, processing 6 dimensions of frequency, and the consequent expansion that would happen with being a 6-dimensional being, like an angelic. Actually, angelics exist in reality fields which are carbon silica, about half as dense as we are. They have a race.
Sounds like Star Trek.
They have a race conscious. You see, in the weekend we're going to get into the incarnational family structures. We are members of vast incarnational families. The fact that we're here, Mitchell, on this earth right now, implies that there are at least 11 other simultaneous incarnations in space and time that are part of one soul identity that projected 12 aspects of itself from the harmonic universe they live into our harmonic universe. If you can gather those 12 together...
Of which we are part.
Of which we are part.
Only a part.
We're one of 12. We have an incarnational family of 12. If one of them makes it, like the biblical injunction, if one of you makes it, you all rise up. You'll have what's called a race or a species planetary memory record. You'll have the memory matrices of at least 11 other incarnations in space and time. Timeless, simultaneous. Nostradamus, for example, if he's a member of your incarnational family, he exists right now. What he does in his life, the choices he makes, can influence you.
Parallel
and vice
worlds.
versa. Exactly. Simultaneous incarnations in space and time.
Yep.
Maybe not on this planet, maybe not in this time,
Sure.
but certainly within the 3-dimensional harmonic universe.
Very interesting.
The Akashic record, what we call the Akashic record. Archangelics, or fully embodied oversouls, have a memory matrix of at least 144 simultaneous incarnations. They have a planetary memory record. They know themselves as, for example, what we were saying before, a 3-dimensional being. We're lucky if we can integrate our mental, emotional, and physical bodies in one lifetime.
Right.
The angelics have 6-dimensional consciousness. They have a species race memory matrix. Fully embodied oversouls they know themselves as planet now. They have planetary memory matrices, and that we call the Akashic or Akashic records. Those that truly do Akashic record readings can tap into one of at least 144 simultaneous incarnations, separate sentient identities.
So they
that
are
we are
connected
related
to, but separate from the Dora-Torah records.
Well, the Dora-Torah records gives you the knowledge of these different space-time fields. You
Okay.
see?
Yes.
And it will also give you the techniques to be able to do these types
So
of
it doesn't
readings.
have the personal biography, so to speak, or lineage information.
Oh, it does.
Oh, it does.
Very, very much so.
So
The books
what's
that
the-
books that became the angelic rosters of Enoch, the tables of testimony, the books of maps and keys,
So what
actually give you
how
all
do
the
you characterize
lineages.
the difference? I'm trying to make a distinction
Yes.
or a clarification of these two bodies of information.
Right.
The one that you're describing,
Okay.
the Dora-Torah,
An Akashic record
and the
is simply a
Akashic.
planetary memory record.
Okay, so it's planetary as opposed to
it's as
solar, systemic, galactic.
as opposed
Is that what
to
you're saying?
galactic or universal or those huge gestalts of cosmic
Whereas the
consciousness.
Dora-Torah are specifically, well, they include this microcosmic Earth
Oh,
plane,
yes.
but go far beyond.
The Dora-Torah gives you the whole history of the last time life was seeded into this 15-dimensional time matrix, which was 950 billion years ago, the last of the great Alpha Omega cycles. And certainly not the last one. It's the last, you could call it the last outbreath of God's source, the Great Spirit. Because what we call what we call the Great Source, the Great Spirit, God, we call it the Unisai. It's an Anahazi word, but it's very similar, Mitch, to that Sanskrit word Sunyu, which means the void. In the beginning was the Word, exactly. Or as my grandfather, who was, I think, raised in Eastern Europe, would have said, "You know, Phil, in the beginning was the void." Yes, because in the beginning was the void, and the void was God, and the void was with God. When God projects portions of its consciousness out from the void to experience dimensionalized systems, we call this stair-step creation. God's source individuating within itself, stepping itself down into smaller and smaller and smaller packets, to be able to express itself in a myriad and a plethora of forms, and bring that experience back with it when God takes the in-breath, lets it mingle for a while, and then takes that out-breath again, that next out-breath, to hearken that next Alpha-Omega cycle. You know, like in the Essene Gospel of Peace, it is said in the third communion with the angel of air, and betwixt the breathing in and breathing out is hidden all the mysteries of the infinite garden at the top of the in-breath. And the Unisai is also called the source that breathes. It's the breathing rhythm of the cosmos. And we study what the actual substance of the Unisai is. God, there are two aspects of the Unisai.
Substance.
There is stillness or absence of substance or movement, but then there is substance. And the substance of God is actual ultra micro particles that we call measurable. And it is consciousness. All energy is conscious.
Yes.
And all consciousness is energy. You can't separate consciousness from consciousness. Only to give the illusion of its separation.
Okay,
so just
now
to
let's
recap.
let's go into the nature of healing from this point of view.
Okay.
And in other words, what people, when they attend your workshops and talks, garner for themselves through it.
They're going to learn, first of all, they're going to learn to be able to regain their original organic imprint for health. There was an original structure, there is a structure to our mind, body, spirit systems. We were designed in a very, very particular fashion. We call this the pattern of perfection. The original human that was created, legend has it, 560 million years ago, as an angelic human. We were created to be guardians of the planet and its stargates, to be healers, and bridges, and not just bridges of understanding, but to create actual bridges, actual constructs,
material
bridges from here to heaven, actually, you may say.
Yes.
And
so is that what involves then the whole idea that you were speaking to me earlier about of the stellar bridge?
The design of the original human was a 12-strand DNA pattern called a silicate matrix.
And how many of ours are hooked up at this point? How many strands are out?
Oh, most of us are working on our fourth strand. You see, we wouldn't have three.
So it's between three and four.
We wouldn't have three-dimensional consciousness. We didn't have three DNA strands.
But the point is that you've got human beings have in their legacy 12 strands.
Yes,
in general.
Most of us
three
humans,
of which are activated, and that means we're operating at a quarter speed.
Exactly, a quarter of what we could. Our potential is to be fully embodied. When we were first created and first conceived, we were conceived to be able to achieve full avatar or Christed status, to embody our avatar levels in a human form to actually embody them.
Yes, indeed.
12 dimensions of consciousness into a human form by virtue of having 12 strands of DNA activated.
So it's
a full silicate matrix.
Per strand,
in one immortal lifetime.
a dimension per strand.
Yes, you're exactly right. One DNA strand processes one dimension of frequency. The body interprets it. You see, DNA is like a film strip. Our consciousness is like the light that focuses, the projector that focuses through the DNA. And this holographic reality picture of our lives is a projection of our consciousness through our DNA distortions and all.
Okay.
See.
So as the strands get activated,
Yes.
to that extent we begin to ascend in the human hierarchy toward
Right.
the divine hierarchy.
We have vast families of consciousness.
Is that so?
The Holy Spirit is multi-dimensional. We will teach the actual tangible structure of the soul and the higher dimensional identities. We will really teach the roadmap back, the structure of the Holy Spirit, the evolutionary path of human consciousness from source to here. But it is not our evolutionary destiny to be trapped in three-dimensional embodiment. We were made to be able to ascend through the various harmonics, to bring in those aspects of ourselves that sit their harmonics, just waiting for us to bring in that dimensional frequency that allow us to expand.
Yes. So the point
Yes.
is that the great masters were able to dematerialize and rematerialize at will.
Yes.
And
They
that
had function
could
over
only
their-
be
Yes.
because they had the activated strands beyond
Exactly.
three.
They had control over their manifestation, demanifestation templates because they had the DNA that allowed them to do so.
And then being on Earth isn't being trapped. It's just a visit that they can
Yes.
come and go
They can
to
come and go,
from.
they can blink out of here into the second harmonic universe, play with the angels, the third harmonic universe where Earth is known as Gaia, or the fourth harmonic universe where reality is liquid light fields. We call it the liquid light fields of Aramatena.
So
but
when
let me tell
somebody
you just briefly about the Cathara.
Yes,
okay?
the healing part.
Yeah. We're using very, very specialized frequency patterns. We acknowledge levels of the subtle body anatomy that are absolutely necessary to generate complete mind, body, spirit healing. We access a level of manifestation deep inside the body called the Cathara grid. And it is the core manifestation template upon which anything that manifests upon. So if you don't clear the distortions within the level of the Cathara grid at the Cathara grid, it will be passed on to every successive level of manifestation. And this includes the axiotonal lines, which generate the chakra system, which generates the meridian lines, the acupoints, ultimately the physical body structure.
Get it right from the beginning.
Get it right from the beginning. Yeah. Oh, well,
So
yeah.
the classes will help to clear the Catharic level so that all that is built upon it
Yes.
will also there be cleared.
And that can happen spontaneously. We're using, we not only acknowledge that this Cathara grid exists, and it was known in ancient times, the Kabbalistic Tree of Life is a version of the Cathara grid, which was known in pre-ancient times, and scholarly Kabbalists will tell you that it was always known as the Cathara grid.
Is that
That's
so?
why they called it the anatomy of the body of God, because everything in manifestation, in existence,
They have that
has
name.
a Cathara grid at its core.
They had the ancient Kabbalists
Yes, they did. And I got in a lot of
Cathara?
trouble in Hebrew school for even mentioning the word Cathara.
You knew it then?
That was a no-no. Yes, I did. And that's another story.
Wow.
But-
we'll have to save that one for another time.
This whole system was brought in its complete form by Ashiana Dean, formerly known as Anna Hayes, the author of the Voyagers books. And what a blessing it is to have these teachings back, to be able to restore the original organic imprint for health upon which we were originally conceived as angelic humans. To understand the attitudes and etiquette of healing facilitation.
What do you mean by that?
You know?
What do you mean by that?
I mean, I'm talking about how to generate love when soft love is required, when tough love is required, what the illusion of martyrdom really is. Protocols that have been sadly, sad to say, missing from a lot of holistic healing systems. It's a
Or
very,
cultural
very
systems for that matter.
Exactly right. It's a very, very complete system to teach you how to deal with multi-dimensional, higher dimensional frequency and how to transmit it safely. For example, if anybody out there is a Reiki practitioner, the Reiki system was given to Yusui to deal with basically what's called telluric current, first, second, and third dimensional current, the whole wavelengths, the whole spectrum of red, orange, gold, and violet. We deal with much higher frequencies called Dora-Torah 1 current that can actually override the distorted programs in the lower Cathara spheres. which in themselves hold the programs for dimensional systems and our higher dimensional levels of identity. It's a very complete, highly refined, highly detailed, but I'm happy to say, very easy system to learn and to apply. And you not only help yourself, you not only help your client, you help yourself, and you also help the planet simultaneously. It's co-generative healing at its best. It's a wonderful, wonderful system. It's a gift that we've been given back, this information back now at this very precarious time in our history, in our race history, when we're experiencing something called a stellar activation cycle or a stellar bridge, which I'm sure we'll get into in the next half an hour.
Exactly, we will do so.
Yes.
One of the things I think I would like to underscore here, Phil, is that we know between us that there are many healing systems,
Yes.
there are many spiritual systems, there are many techniques planet-wide that have been with us for many thousands of years.
Yes.
And the idea of coming into one's Christic self is not a new one.
Yes.
Certainly it is around and in many esoteric schools of wisdom and thought. What is here is an opportunity to perhaps harken back to what might be the original teaching of this prior to interpretations and other possible distortions.
This is the Cathara healing system is the foundation of all healing systems.
It may be the foundational
At the
grid.
heart of the mystery ascension schools, the Mithraic, Eleusinian mystery schools, this is the information now being brought back into the public domain.
Right.
For all.
Thank you for helping to bring it back.
It's my pleasure.
Truly appreciate it.
Thank you, Mitchell.
This is Mitchell J. Rabin for a Better World. We've been talking with Phil Gruber about Cathara healing. And if you're interested in any of the workshops or any of the information connected to it, please go to www.abetterworld.net or call us at 212-420-0800. And we look forward to seeing you there and next week.